I think Disrupt HR is a really powerful platform, and I'm so sad that we don't get to do it in one space yet. We will.
Hello, this is John Bernatovich. I'm the president and founder of Willory, and I'm also one of the organizers for Disrupt HR Columbus. I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Melissa Briggs-Phillips. She is a psychologist. She owns a firm called Next Generation Behavioral Health. You can get in touch with her at her toll-free number of 800-570-1509, or you can find her on her website at www.behaveforward.com. And delighted to have Dr. Melissa on this Zoom call. And I will, in full disclosure, I'm a client of Dr. Melissa. We've been in communication in the last year. I saw her present at a Hirako event, which probably was over a year ago. And she did an amazing job and connected with me. She felt like she was talking just to me, but there were 200 people in the room because she was mentioning sport athletes and business owners, and those are the things I heard, and I'm both of those. So super excited to develop the relationship with Dr. Melissa. She's an amazing person and a great support resource if for those of you that are maybe challenged by what's going on, and that's the reason why we asked her to be on today's Zoom call. She has some pretty interesting insights and can share her own perspective. So Dr. Melissa, welcome to our video coffee chat, which I know you have your coffee raring to go.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation today. I really am.
You got it. So one of the interesting things about doing these is most people that we've connected with Dr. Melissa have been rerouted out of their traditional brick and mortar office to be working from home. And many of those have been challenged to work not only from home, which may be different, but also with a spouse and potentially with 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 6 was the most children I've heard somebody trying to help out in their academic, however you want to call it, their accolades and their academics as they try to do online school, as we kind of adjust to everyone's adjusting to this academically and professionally. So, but that being said, I know you're working in your office. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how have you been able to do that, and maybe explain a little bit for people that are how that's working?
So I mean, I certainly have conversations all day with folks who are doing exactly what you described. I am in the state of Ohio considered essential, so people can come to my office, and because my setup is very unique, I have a very private space. Like my waiting room is private, the bathroom is private. I have this furniture spaced, and I found an antibacterial spray that I can wipe down my leather club chairs and not destroy my leather. So it's, if someone needs to come in, it's very risk mitigated in terms of how I have it set up. You can never touch a surface while you're in here. I've had a lot of folks that want to go telehealth. That's the term for it. So I use certain online platforms to do that as well. And my offices are in a building with all businesses that have closed. So it's almost this daily emotional reminder for me when I do come in my space, and it's my space, but the businesses near me and then in my building are all closed. So it's somber. It's sort of this somber reminder when I do come in here. And I do it sometimes because, just like everyone else, I have students at home online and a spouse working from home, and I take confidentiality and privacy very seriously. So it is, it's a blessing that I get to leave, and I know that. It feels very decadent to me. And there were, I mean, maybe a 2-week stretch there where no one in my family left the house at all, and I got to leave. So I'm pretty blessed in that way.
Yeah, having been there before, I know it is. I would feel very safe coming to your office. Now, you said you're doing a lot of telehealth, so
yeah,
what would you say, 50-50? You're seeing patients in your office?
Yeah, you know, during the peak in Ohio, I decided to go straight telehealth for 2 weeks. So the last 2 weeks, today was my first day back in office to see people. And it's interesting. It's this strange and unexpected intimacy to get to see people in their own environment. And we chatted about this before. I get to meet people's pets, and I get to get a home tour sometimes of, a kitchen remodel that was something that almost destroyed a marriage. And I get to see like the final project or product. So there's these beautiful little intimacies that I didn't expect. But for me, I'm an extrovert. And so I get energy from people and get energy from sharing a space with people. So there's that. And I miss that. And I also think there's something really powerful about therapy happening in a space, because the space starts to represent where you do that work. And certainly therapy and coaching, I do both. And so there's a great amount of diversity in the conversations that I have with people. But if it's really serious trauma work, then it's important to have you leave it here. And I almost will have clients visualize sometimes, like, you leave the stone here, the heavy stone you just gave me in that conversation. I'll keep it for you. It's here. We can come back to it. But now we're going to set a boundary, and you're going to go back to living your daily life. And I work with really successful people who have a lot of responsibility. So it's important for them to kind of be able to cognitively compartmentalize. That's actually a skill set. So you can't do that if you're on the toilet in your master bathroom, hiding from your children and your spouse, trying to have a conversation. So we just paused some of the work. We're just pausing until we can share space again.
If that's the quietest place in your house, right? That's a sad state of affairs. But I know nowadays that's probably not too far stretched to imagine. But I can say, working from home for the last, it's been 10 years full time, and then prior to that, probably 5+ additional years. Like it's really hard to separate those two things at times. So I could imagine the value and benefit, the physical aspect of this is where I deal with my heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I leave that at Dr. Melissa's office, and I continue to try to go on with my day as best I can. That's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. So I'm sure there's a lot to the answer to this question. So why do you do what you do, Dr. Melissa?
Gosh, that is a big question. I love what I do. I think that it's a confluence of events and an accident of history that I ended up becoming a clinical psychologist, but it's in alignment with my core values and who I am. So I feel really lucky that I get to do what I do. And, sometimes when folks hear about some of the content of what I do, especially some of the trauma work, they might think, well, gosh, who would say that? Well, I'm certainly not thankful that people experience these kinds of things, but I view it as sacred that I get to partner with folks as they navigate either healing from old wounds or some of the upside stuff I get to do, which is a high potential in an organization who's just looking to deconstruct some internal barriers that are getting in the way from achieving that next level thing. I have a great blend of work that maybe is a little unusual, because I finished my PhD a while ago and then didn't pursue a very traditional career path. So I went straight through school and was done with my PhD work at 27, but then I became a project director, which led me into some project management work. And I was the executive director of an innovation center. I was the chief of staff for a research office for a year, and hired and restructured. And so I've done budgets, and I've managed teams, and had to meet deadlines and make multiple stakeholders happy all at one time. And so I've sort of existed in a couple of different worlds, but I've always been an adjunct and always done, meaning teaching, and always done clinical work part-time. So my opening my practice at the end of 2014, early 2015 was a fusion of what I was trained to do and then what I did as a job for money for 15, 18 years. So what I get to do now sits at the nexus of mental health and business and leadership, and it's my sweet spot. I very much love what I get to do. So that, I guess, was a little
That's
longer
cool.
answer than maybe you were going for. Sorry.
No, it's your answer. No, it makes total sense. I get it. Yeah, it's neat that you can leverage those experiences, as you said, have some practical business related experience that you can relate to people in that regard that may be going through some of those challenges. I'm just always curious, and I've thought of this of you, and I figured I'd ask the question now. Like, do you feel like an extra level of responsibility or pressure to always basically be okay as someone that practices and professionally works with people that may not be okay or have challenges, or as you said, gone through traumas? You as a practicing psychologist, like how hard is that for you sometimes when you have a bad day, or you just want to scream an expletive out the window, or whatever the case might be?
Well, I've been known to scream expletives.
I know you have. Yes.
Full disclosure.
Yes.
Full disclosure there.
Yeah. You're perfect Disrupt HR presenter.
So I'll answer that in the age of COVID. How about that? Because sure. The short answer is yes. I think to do what we do, if you honor it and you take it seriously, you walk your talk and you live your values. And so to me, it isn't like a responsibility that feels onerous. It feels like, well, I want to live a good life, and here are things I talk about, and these are the controllables, and I execute those. So I ruthlessly curate my life with, and I'm an extrovert, so I love people, but if someone brings toxicity or abusiveness, or it's very easy for me. I mean, every now and then one gets past the goalie. Come on, like I'm not.
Right. You're not perfect.
I am not perfect, yeah. But I'm pretty good at protecting my mental capital so that I can give it to the people who've earned it, with family and friends. And so I do believe if you do this kind of work, you've got to have good boundaries, and you do have to live your values so that you have energy to give people. So in this time, it's unusual for me because I'm living it too. So I generally, there are a few things that I might not consider like something I would take on clinically because it touches too close to home, or I don't think I can do that without projecting or have transference issues. And I think every great therapist like knows there are certain things that you're just not going to take on. But I'm living coronavirus too. So there's no break. So the conversations that I have all day with people, and the need has just gone like this. I don't know if you can see my hands.
I can. Yeah.
It's been extraordinary. And so that part, I'm finding myself challenged in ways that are new for me because I'm tired too. And I have kids at home too. And I have some fear and worry and concern. And so I'm living the thing that I'm working on all day with people, and that's new for me. So I've had to make some adjustments. The first 2 or 3 weeks, I try to maintain my same schedule. And when I'm with people in my office, I can work with a lot of folks because there's diversity in my day. I love what I do. But doing this, I realized after 2 weeks of like 8 Zoom calls in a row that I was
not gonna do that. Yeah, too much.
I wasn't okay. So I just changed my rhythm of my day. So I split it up in ways that are new for me. I have to take some longer breaks in between sessions. I maybe spread my day out longer so I can like have some, do a little meditation or mindfulness in between, or go for a walk. So I think I'm pivoting in the way that a lot of business owners are trying to figure out right now. So that's a long answer again to your really.
No, yeah, it's very, very helpful and insightful. Yeah, I think the thing I've noticed is that we all were abruptly required to change. There's a major change that came, and then how well we were able to adapt to that while staying healthy and safe and having the fear of that, to me, has been the adaptability and the things that we've done in our firm and in our family compared to what we did 45 days ago. It's like I'm a different person, a different household, different everything.
Absolutely. And I will say, I have said multiple times to some clients who've been through some stuff that they almost get quieter and calmer when there's chaos. Like if you are a trauma survivor, an abuse survivor, you came from a really dysfunctional family, abusive or alcoholic, or fill in the blank. These folks are it's interesting to watch post-trauma thrivers in this context, because they compartmentalize, they're staying calm, they don't like it, but they're problem solving. If it required a 25% reduction in payroll, they did that. Right? Like they just kind of became still through this. And it's not that they're not distressed, but I am noticing this cohort of some of my folks who, I wouldn't say they're thriving, but they have like this repertoire of skills, or at least some go-tos that they've worked really hard to cultivate, that are coming in handy now. So folks that live with panic disorder or chronic, some mood disorder like depression or generalized anxiety, that have worked really hard to build some great capacities to navigate through those things, they're using all of those skill sets right now. And so my folks that have never had a panic attack before, so this is in my personal and professional life, because people know what I do. So I can't tell you how many times people have called me and they're like, okay, so this happened to me in the soup aisle at Giant Eagle. Is that a panic attack? I go through the list. I'm like, yes, it was. Your first panic attack ever at 52 years old. I feel like that's happening a lot, that there's sort of, okay, I know what this is. And then this brand new experience, because it's ever present and really scary if you've never felt anxious before or just cried for no reason before. I think this is brand new for some folks, and it can be really hard to figure out what even is going on. So you can find a therapist. We do telehealth. So, I'm getting calls from folks that I haven't seen in 5 years that are like, hey, remember me? And of course I do. I carry all my peeps with me. So it's sort of an unprecedented time, I think, in that way, for anxiety and depression.
Sure. Yeah, all those tools and things that you've taught them or your clients have put in place. I mean, I know, having studied quite a bit emotional intelligence and crucial conversations, those are all trained behaviors. The natural instinct is fight or flight, and then there's something in the midst of that to maintain and control your emotions. So I hear you. So as it relates to all of this, so which there will be a time, we're on the other side of this temporary normal, I'm calling it. What do you see yourself doing, and maybe people doing differently, having gone through the experience of COVID?
Oh gosh, all right, my stuff, that's not very exciting. So my stuff would be doing more platforms like this, more webinars, and I've done them before, but as someone who speaks at like professional development conferences and business conferences, within 24-hour period, I had a ton of things just canceled. And that was a little disorienting for a bit. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to figure this out. And all it's doing is forcing me to do some stuff that maybe I drag my feet on. So creating webinars or a YouTube channel or some sort of web remote access to content that I think can be useful to people. So that's what I'll add to my life. It isn't as much a takeaway as a add or a change delivery method. How I think it affects other people, gosh, it's so diverse. Some of the business owners that I've had conversations with, let's just say the last 30 days. So folks that were resistant to doing remote work, I mean, meaning people who own companies are a little old school about, I want butts and seats, right? Like that's out there. And especially in certain sectors like insurance and banking. And like, there are some sectors where it's, wealth management and finance. Like, so that whole world has been, because there's so many regulations around how to communicate and it's fascinating. Everyone had to go home. So everyone had to adjust really quickly, and all these regulations are just out the window. And folks that were really resistant to remote work being a place that could be productive, they're seeing, oh, maybe it's more efficient because the conversations in the hallways and the little ways that we might waste time during the day with coworkers, now people can get stuff done in 3.5 hours that maybe with a commute time and office thing. So I think it could be interesting to see how that plays out in a positive way, which will have an impact, I think, on commercial real estate. I mean, what do I know? But I've been thinking through all the dominoes of this and effects 5 to 10 years from now. I do think that because of the mental health impact of this, it is forcing people to be vulnerable in new ways. And I've encouraged some leaders that I work with who are struggling and maybe never would have shared with their team what their experience was, to share, and that breaks down barriers in a good way. So I think in the HR world, that's going to be huge. Like, so how do we, this boundary thing with how do we help people set boundaries, end their day, begin their day, signify that they're at work, signify that they're at home when they're in one space. And you guys are experts at this. So I would say you'll probably be content experts on this and could really teach a lot of folks because you've been doing it.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, we've done a couple webinars around the topic, and I've gotten a few calls, and I'm betting on that. You mentioned something that maybe you hadn't done before this, and now you're forced to do it. So one of the things on my list was to write a book about business success and failure, what I thought business success was versus what it wasn't, how work has changed, and how I think remote work is the only way to do it, if you can do it, for all the reasons that you mentioned: efficiency, freedom, autonomy. But then also you have the mindset of, you use the word old school, that I got to see you do it, because if I don't see you do it, I don't think you're doing it. And there's tools and resources to do that. And then lastly, around how people talk about leveraging people, but do they really mean it? Do they really mean what you mean? And I think the biggest change I felt personally as a leader is continued transparency and communication throughout a crisis. I've done the best I can with my team to share and communicate as often as I can about good and bad. When I don't know the answer to a question, I say I don't know. I don't know what's going to come. And I hope that's made an impact to my team. I'm just doing the best I can in the midst of the circumstance. So yeah, I feel you that I believe wholeheartedly that remote work will be here to stay. And the way that you thought about it before and after, I think is probably one of the biggest, most profound impacts. So
I agree.
So from an HR perspective, is there anything that you could recommend or suggest, especially from the emotional toll that this has taken on? So HR professionals at times have to practice, that part of their work in dealing with employee related issues. Are there any suggestions you might have to an HR professional that may be getting a call from a line worker, having had to lay off a bunch of people, and the impact of that? Is there any tools or suggestions you might have to help them?
Oh, that's a great question. All right, so I'll kind of frame it this way. In the last 30 days, the conversations I've had with HR professionals, from senior leaders in organizations to generalists who are trying to help businesses transition, I will say it's been kind of epic for people. So it's been a lot. So my first thought is, if I'm running down the list of my HR employee or HR folk clients, they've been working 10, 12-hour days trying to get people situated. Like, so in generally, the human resource professional, human as the resource, we just disrupted a lot of humans. And most folks take that job very seriously, right? Where they're like, okay, I want to make sure my people are okay. And it's been everything from helping somebody who maybe isn't technologically savvy, so you got HR VPs like on cell phone calls with staff trying to teach them how to dial into a Zoom meeting, to making, think at large organizations like Ohio State, right? They just sent thousands of people home at once. And so the HR professionals in higher education and some large companies really care about getting their people situated and having them be able to contribute, because people feel good when they're offering something meaningful. Like, maybe a handful of folks I've talked to are like, I'm kind of bored. Like, I don't have much going on. But for the most part, that's not what I'm hearing. People are working harder because they have, in the transition, lost some efficiencies. So it's like this short-term burst of a lot of work and effort. And so I tell HR folks, okay, let's chunk this up into 30-day increments. Like, this first 30 days was drinking from the fire hose, hair on fire, whatever metaphor you want to come up with. But then I have noticed that they're starting to transition to this phase 2 of, okay, how do I communicate expectations? How do I check on deliverables? How do I check in on people to make sure they're okay? I mean, you can't take it all on. That's one thing, that you're responsible to your staff. You are not responsible for them. You just can't do that. And so my feelers and my empaths, that's hard for them, because when they get on the phone with the employee and they're crying, the biggest stressor right now is people at home with young children. And I will say that is routinely who is crying. Like, there's 2 categories of like grief. And, my style is pretty behavioral and I'm pretty action oriented, as or anyone that's ever worked with me would know. But I cry with my peeps when there's stuff going on, and the parents at the edge with young children trying to work and parent and manage that. And then there's the like grief piece, like people who are canceling weddings and graduation parties and all this anticipatory grief that's going on for people. So I would say those 2 clusters are going to be what's next in terms of the human resource issues presenting themselves for people. Because as we sustain this parenting demands while you're trying to work, and people who are A+ gold star sticker seekers, I'm like, take the D-. You need a 56.9%. Give the kid a screen, bribe them with M&Ms. No one is giving awards for Mother of the Year right now. It's really okay. You just need to survive this until we can kind of adjust. But if it's sustained, I think it's going to be a challenge for the workforce, for people, that the pressure on folks working with young children, I think it's extraordinary. And that's not my experience. I have teenagers and they're pretty autonomous. So, but the young kids, that's so hard. It's just, so I bow down to the people pulling that off. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've seen it. I felt it. We have a 12 and a 10-year-old, and luckily my wife, she works a bit, but her main priority is to make sure they get through their school day. But I have seen staff members and colleagues and friends talk about the stress of taking on that responsibility. And I even talked to a school teacher who said, in spite of all that, the data that they're seeing, about 40% of the kids are doing nothing. They're literally doing none of their work.
Whoa.
60% are doing some of it. And then maybe it falls into your math. Like, that's what I said. Let's just do the best we can. An A+ is not likely during these circumstances. There's too much stuff going on. Right? Too much stuff going on. But my last question for you before we get into Disrupt HR and how you heard about it and what we're going to do when the time comes to actually present on the topics is, one of the things that I'm just curious, this is more a personal question than anything else. I feel like for a period of time with the unknown and no end date, and still there isn't one, but like you said, we've had time to adapt. I think people really strive on hope. Like, there's some level of hope. And I feel like for a period of time, like, we all had like hope was sucked out of the universe, or out of the earth for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to, without an end date, I know people, I'm one of them, but not fanatic about sports. Like, sports are not around. Like, that's a big release for people. Things you traditionally did, seeing family, hugging people, seeing your family come over. Like, what do you recommend to people as they navigate through what felt like a hopeless situation, and then trying to manufacture or create that on your own?
Oh gosh, that I think in my head when I ponder this, because I do ponder this, I break it into kind of categories. So there are folks right now who are on the front lines, who are healthcare workers and in hot spots where it's really scary and it's real and it's visceral, and they're in this like kind of trauma survive mode. And so that's like a discrete category. Then there's folks that the economic tsunami of this was fast and complete. And that is its own kind of unique category of survival. So those two sets of experiences are sort of like here. And then the bigger swath of America, where it's less an immediate sort of terror or horror, and it's more sort of these like vaguer life shifts that have happened when compared to being a frontline ICU nurse in Brooklyn.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Thank you for the perspective.
So it's like there's survival mode happening and immediate support that is like a 24-hour clock. And then for most people, I think you have to recalibrate the metrics. So folks that are strivers, want to accomplish things, be productive, I think you have to take a hard look at what that actually can be. I think there's some utility to doing a 24-hour cycle where you go, okay, so 24 hours from now, here are some vague intentions I'm going to set for my day. Some people really like an hourly structured schedule. They dig it. You know, their alarm's still going off. They are still showering. And I had someone tell me the other day, and she's been home for a month and she manages a lot of money, okay? And she said to me, I still put on perfume. She's like, what the hell? I'm not even like leaving. I'm home with my pets. Like I'm still, so she's still doing these symbolic markers. And so there are little things that people are doing to start their day at home to feel a sense of accomplishment. I think there's a big thing to be said for fear, because fear and anxiety kill two things. They kill empathy and they kill complex problem solving. So if you are in a panic state of fear, imminent fear, you can't have empathy, your brain literally can't do it, and you can't complex problem solve. Well, I think hope is the result of complex problem. It's in that same family of psychological experiences. So doing what you can to manage the deluge of fear messages, it was necessary. You know, I think government officials had to kind of scare us so we would change our behavior. I understand that. And as a psychologist, I will be thinking about this for years, probably. The sudden and immediate change of behavior that happened, and it was astonishing to me. I'm in the business of behavior change. Behave Forward is my website. And it is a never-ending siege to get people to change their behavior sometimes. And I go to the grocery store, people stand 6 feet apart, everyone's wearing a mask, they move in the aisle, generally speaking. It's this immediate behavior change because of fear. But we cannot exist in a state of immediate fear and threat. We have to make some calculated decisions about actual risk and then fear. Because if you're always watching news that's telling you horror stories, your adrenal system is going to be overproducing. The parasympathetic nervous system thing is going to be in a limbic system hijack, and that's not good for us. It kills hope. So if you're living in a constant state of fear, you can't even imagine a tomorrow. So anticipatory joy is, and this is one I'm still noodling because everyone's talking about it to me. A lot of people like me would tell clients like, hey, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. You know, you're going to do this hard push right here, but then in July, you get to go to Italy for 2 weeks, or you have the Lady Gaga concert, or you have tickets to the NCAA tournament, or, like there's these distal, joyful things to look forward to. Well, for a lot of people, gone. Right. And so I don't have a great answer to how to replace that, other than smaller things, like daily smaller things, to give you that little like hit of anticipatory joy. I think we have to kind of shorten our, vision here so that we don't start making movies about apocalyptic futures and giving ourselves real physical experiences based on that fiction. So it is, I think it's a work in progress. I think 30 days from now, I'll have another set of thoughts because of conversations with clients, because clients are my teachers too. They will come in and say, hey, I found this thing works for me. And it's really cool for me to then be able to say, okay, I'm going to share that with people. I will not name you. I will not disclose anything, but I'm going to share this little tidbit. And so we are each other's best guiders if we trust sometimes. So I think if we stay open to it and HR professionals are paying attention to it, your employees will give you some nuggets that you can then share.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll say for us personally, I look forward to my 7:30 walk with my family and neighbors. We do it all in a social distance. Like, the cops aren't going to be called. There's more than 10 people, but we're enjoying a casual walk outside. And it is something we all look forward to. And I think I know I'll miss it when we go back to our normal, busy, crazy life. We'll have to force us to do it maybe once a month. That would be something to celebrate. But
well, golf is a thing you can do. And,
yes.
That's one outcome that has been wonderful. So you can drive to a golf course separate, you walk. They have I don't know if you've played, the pins turn, you can't touch the flag, the cups are upside down, so it bounces off. So I've been nudging my 17-year-old to like kind of play more. And since it's the only thing he can do since baseball season was canceled and he can't play in the summer basketball league. So he plays golf all the time. And it's something we can do as a family. So there's there's a little pivot that happened in my family system that never would have happened if he was allowed to be on a basketball court or pitching in a baseball game. So you find those little tweaks. And I think over the next 30 to 60 days, more folks will do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's cool. All right, well, as everyone can probably tell, there's a great reason why Dr. Melissa was selected as one of our original 13 speakers for Disrupt HR Columbus, of which we're going to be holding a virtual roundtable on April 30th from 4 to 5 o'clock, maybe even a little bit past 5, based upon all the topics we're going to be discussing. So please consider joining us for that. So my last question, Dr. Melissa, tell me about your experience with Disrupt HR and your forward thinking to presenting on whatever topic you might at that particular time relative to this concept that we're so excited to bring to Columbus.
Gosh, I have been thinking about how I would shift, change, alter, edit some of the thoughts. I think Disrupt HR is a really powerful platform, and I'm so sad that we don't get to do it in one space yet. We will. I know it's coming. So when we can be in a room, I think that's going to be really neat, and I'm looking forward to it. The opportunity to have really honest, raw conversations about tough things was really appealing to me. So for me, as I have looked through all, sort of the archive of some of the other speakers, I've been having a blast. I carve out a little chunk of time where I can watch what people have talked about all over, which is really neat. So you get the sense of like regional interest, what might be kind of something that's more relevant for this region over here, this region over here. I was excited to talk about sexual harassment, and I left my topic very generically defined so that I could craft what I wanted to say so that it would be, really on topic with what was going on. I think what I'd like to do probably is shift it to how gender may have an impact in an online communication platform. I think it could be interesting because physical access to each other as staff, as teams, that's temporarily removed for a lot of companies. And so a lot of sexual harassment is within this setting, this three-dimensional setting where people are in spaces, where they share space. Well, that variable has just been removed. So now it's, okay, how does power play out verbally? How do meetings go with being interrupted or interrupting somebody to give someone else the floor? Do people behave worse or better in terms of boundary violations or inappropriate context or comments through a screen? Now, if it's all being recorded and there are all kinds of people and you can't tell who's in the room all the time, do you behave better? Is there some sort of familiarity that, people are comfortable? Like I am wearing, I'll show you my footwear. I am wearing my LL Bean slippers right now. So, and they're awesome, and I love them.
They're so comfortable and warm.
They are wonderful. So suit, but my slippers. And so if you are in a casual environment, do you like let your guard down? Where maybe you might say something that you wouldn't say if you were in a boardroom. So I think there's some fascinating things around gender politics that we might be able to get into by the time we meet in person, or even in our conversation when we have our roundtable. So that's what I've been thinking about.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for
Sure.
being such a big part of it. And I appreciate the time that you spent with us today. It was incredibly valuable. I know I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure the people that watched did as well. So please be on the lookout for continued updates on Disrupt HR Columbus, as well as continued video content that we'll be sharing throughout the course of time until we can put on the physical Disrupt HR. In the meantime, please do consider joining us on April 30th for our virtual roundtable. So Dr. Melissa, thank you so much for your time. And until next time, everyone, we'll see you around.